Welcome, everyone. In today's session, we're going to tackle what is often a pretty big milestone, and, let's be honest, a source of some anxiety for learners, navigating a real, authentic Chinese menu. Our goal today is to turn this challenge into one of the most rewarding and practical things you can do with your language skills.
Now, I know when you first see a menu like this, it can be a lot. It can feel like you're just staring at an unbreakable wall of characters. But I promise you, it is not random. There is a deep underlying logic, a kind of grammar, if you think about it, to both how it's laid out and the language itself. So our job today is to take it apart piece by piece.
So to get this done, we're going to move through 4 key parts. First, we'll get the lay of the land by learning to navigate the menu's categories. Then, we'll put on our detective hats and decode the structure of dish names. After that, we'll go from theory to practice and really focus on the language of ordering with confidence. And finally, we'll dive into the super important social and cultural context of the Chinese dining table. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, let's kick off with our first module, navigating the menu. You have to understand that a Chinese menu is not just a random list of food. It's a highly structured document. You can almost think of it like a book with very specific chapters. And understanding that structure, that's our foundational first step.
These characters you see here are your signposts. Let's really break them down. First, we have lung pan. Lung means cold, and pan means plate. Simple enough, right? These are your appetizers. Next up, and this is usually the biggest section, you have rei kai. Rei, of course, means hot. Now, the character cai, kai, is fascinating. By itself, it can mean vegetable, but in this context, it means dish or cuisine. And if you look closely at its structure, you'll see the radical on top, cao, is the grass radical. It tells you its origin is tied to plants, but its meaning has gotten much broader. So, rei kai are your main courses, then we have tang, which is soup. After that comes chu shi, chu means main or primary, and shi means food. So this is your staple food, the rice, the noodles, the things that form the base of the meal. And finally, in yao for drinks. Seriously, just memorizing these 5 terms gives you a roadmap to pretty much any menu you'll encounter.
So that brings us to our second module, and honestly, this is the really cool part, decoding dish names. Here, we're moving past the general categories and into the specific language of the food itself. Chinese dish names are these amazing little constructions. They aren't just random labels, they're like mini descriptions that can tell you the ingredients, the way it's cooked, the flavor, or even a piece of history.
Okay, so our first case study is a dish that's famous all over the world, mapo tofu from Sichuan province. This name is a perfect example of a dish that's named not for how it tastes, but for its origin story. So let's do a little linguistic dissection here.
So let's look at those first 2 characters, ma, po. Ma actually means pockmarked, and po means old woman or grandmother. You'll actually see this character elsewhere. For example, a mother-in-law is po. So it has this feeling of an older, respected woman. The story goes that this dish was created by a woman in the Qing dynasty who ran a restaurant in Chengdu, and she had pockmarks on her face. So by naming the dish after her, we're not just describing food, we're literally embedding a piece of history right there on the menu. It's a beautiful example of how culture is served right on the plate.
Now the second part of the name, tofu, tells us the main ingredient. Let's look at these characters. The first one, do, means bean. And if you look at really early versions of this character, it actually looks like a little vessel holding beans. The second character, fu, has to do with the process of curdling or fermenting. So when you put them together, the characters literally describe the product, bean curd. It's perfectly logical.
Okay, let's analyze a second, incredibly common way dishes are named. You take the cooking method and you add the ingredient. A classic example is hong shao niu rou. Once you get this structure down, you'll be able to figure out a huge number of dishes.
So let's take a closer look at this term, hong shao. This 2-character word describes how the food is cooked. Hong means red, and shao means to braise or to stew. The red part refers to that rich, reddish-brown color the food gets from being slow-cooked in soy sauce and sugar. Now check this out. Look really closely at the character shao. See those 4 little dots at the bottom? That's the radical hua, which means fire. The character itself is literally telling you that fire, sustained heat, is a key part of this cooking method. Learning to spot radicals like that is like learning a secret code that unlocks so many other characters.
And the second part, niu rou, is just the ingredient beef.
Niu means cow or ox, and rou is the all-important character for meat. This is one you absolutely have to remember, because once you know rou, the menu just opens up for you. Chinese has this wonderfully logical kind of modular system. You just stick the character for the animal in front of rou. For example, ji is chicken. So ji rou is chicken meat. Zhu is pig. So zhu rou is pork. It's such an elegant system.
Okay, that brings us to our third module, how to order with confidence. We're going to bridge that gap between just being able to read the menu and actually speaking up and ordering. The key here is mastering a really simple, polite, and super effective sentence pattern.
The whole process is really just 3 distinct steps. Step 1, you need to get the server's attention. You do this by politely calling out, 服务员, 服务员. Step 2, you state what you want. The core phrase is 我要, 我要. The subject is 我, I. The verb is 要, to want. It's direct, it's clear. Step 3, you specify the dish using the structure number plus measure word plus noun. In this case, 一个麻婆豆腐, 一个麻婆豆腐. And a quick grammar note here, ge is the most common all-purpose measure word in Mandarin.
Okay, let's put it all together. I'm going to model the full sentence for you. First, I'll say it really slowly so you can hear each syllable and its tone. Just listen carefully. 服务员我要一个麻婆豆腐. Okay? Now let's try it at a more natural conversational speed. Listen to the rhythm. 服务员我要一个麻婆豆腐. This one sentence pattern is basically your master key.
All right, we have to talk about pronunciation, because this is absolutely critical. Tones are not optional, okay? They are fundamental to the meaning. For 我要, W-A-O, yao, you have a third tone, that's the dipping tone, followed by a sharp falling fourth tone, 我要. It has to sound decisive. Second, a common sound that's tricky for English speakers, the U sound in 服务员. To make this sound, start by saying E, and while you're holding that sound, just round your lips tightly. Yuan. Finally, there's a really important rule called tone sandhi. The number 1, E, is a first tone. But when it comes right before a fourth tone syllable, like g, it actually changes to a second rising tone, yi. So we say yiga. Trust me, mastering these little details will make you sound so much more fluent.
We now come to our final and, I would argue, our most important module, the culture of the table. You can have perfect grammar and vocabulary, but without cultural understanding, it's incomplete. For any of you who are planning to live, study, or work in a Chinese-speaking environment, getting these social dynamics right is not just a nice-to-have, it is critical for building real relationships.
So, the most fundamental concept you need to grasp is communal dining. Unlike the typical Western way of everyone getting their own main course, here you order multiple dishes for the whole group. They're all placed in the center of the table, and everyone shares. This is so much more than just being practical. It's a physical representation of the group being more important than the individual. It's a philosophy that really prioritizes the shared experience and strengthens social bonds.
This slide is basically your cheat sheet for showing respect at the dinner table. And these are not just suggestions. They are really important signals of your cultural awareness. For instance, letting elders be served and start eating first is a direct expression of filial piety, shao, which is a cornerstone of Confucian ethics. You always let a senior person take food from a shared dish first. Using serving chopsticks, or gongkwai, shows you're considerate of others' hygiene. And I cannot stress this last point enough. Never, ever stick your chopsticks upright in your rice bowl. This looks just like incense sticks that are offered to the dead, and it's a huge taboo. Following these rules shows everyone that you're a thoughtful and respectful guest.
The cultural meaning goes so deep that it even gets into the numbers. For a big celebration or a banquet, it's very common to order 8 dishes. Why 8? Well, it's all about how it sounds. The word for 8, ba, sounds a lot like the word fa, which means to prosper, like in the phrase thought sai, to get rich. This kind of wordplay based on sounds, words that sound alike but mean different things, is a huge part of Chinese culture. So as we've seen, a menu is so much more than a list of food. It's a window into a culture's history, its language, it's a living document. And you now have the basic linguistic and cultural tools not only read this document, but to really engage with it. The only question left is,
Where will your journey of culinary and cultural exploration begin?